And it had a lot to offer me. So you get the cleaned up version. You get the outcome of all of that wrestling. Because the truth is, this is a topic that a lot of us don't want to talk about. And yet it is one that many of us wrestle with. And the way that we overcome it is to talk about it. So let's dive in. What do you say? All right. Oh, there's a picture of me there, too. Isn't that funny? Oh, my goodness. So, approval. Well, one of the most commonly avoided types of feedback in the world, in life, is disapproval, right? We naturally move toward the applause. We move toward the smiles and the hugs and the happy greetings. And we move away from those types of feedback that don't feel good and that scare us. We have this natural mechanism. It's our survival mechanism that recognizes positive feedback and says, this is good. We can do that more. And that was bad. Don't ever do that again. And we collect data from the moment we take our first breath until right now, and we never stop. So we collect all this information and we form all these opinions about what and who and where is good and bad and what to move toward and what to avoid. But you know what happens? If you've listened to a podcast or read a book or listened to anybody talk about this survival business at all, you know that something else that we do is we perceive danger where there is none, right? Why is that? Well, it comes from the impressions that we had early in life. When you were growing up, maybe you got in trouble for this and you got praised for that. You were punished for this and you were rewarded for that. Then you went to your first day at school. Maybe it was nursery school, kindergarten, or first grade, or daycare. And you had the first experience of being treated like you're really special, and you're like, I want to go back there. Then you had your first experience of being judged or made fun of or ignored by somebody in class, and you're like, I don't ever want to go there again. I remember even in high school, I got notes in my locker. The truth of the matter, if you can believe this, was I was so shy I could not say hello. Well, the girls who were older than me, and they're supposed to be mean at this time in life, right, left me nasty notes in my locker about how stuck up I was. And I'm like, it took me years to figure out, I just didn't have the courage to say hi. But anyway, we were just doing what kids do, right? We're all experimenting. So the fact is that approval seeking, seems like a logical plan. And disapproval avoidance seems like a logical one too. But guess what happens? We also avoid our opportunities to discover who we are, to be ourselves. There's that buzzword, authenticity, that we've been talking about all month long. So I'm going to be authentic right now. I make sure that they put my microphone under the shirt that I'm wearing in case I get hot. Well, you should probably play some of that music again, because I'm going to... I might toss my sweater into the crowd. Are you ready? I'm going to do it. Okay. But that's it. No more. So every moment provides you with an opportunity. It provides us with opportunities. And if we, for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years or more, have been collecting reasons why not to go over there and not to talk to those people and not to try this again, we're not going to be doing very much. We're not going to be ourselves very much, are we? Because we've collected all these reasons why not. So this mechanism that's supposed to protect us from harm ends up being something that protects us from our own opportunities. And that's no fun at all. However, the same thing that created the problem is something that we can use to create our solution. This is a science of mindy thing. Ernest Holmes says in this little book, if you're not a big reader, we may still have a couple of copies. This book's only that thick. It's not too much trouble to read it. It's called The Basic Ideas of Science of Mind. And there's a beautiful piece in the first few chapters that talks about how habits are created and why. Our subconscious automates things that we think and feel repeatedly. It does us a little favor. It says, well, she seems to think that like every day, so we're going to go ahead and make that automatic. Then she can do something else, right? He seems to think about that every day, so we're going to make it habitual so he can go on and do something else, right? Well, here's what happens. I always say, and you've probably heard me say it before, that's really great when it comes to putting on my seatbelt before my car is moving. It's really great to brush my teeth and not have to get up and think about it and decide every day. It's not so great when we habituate thoughts and feelings about ourselves and others in life that hold us back. And we've thought them and felt them so many times that they're automatic, they're habitual. Because guess what that means? That means that they are unconscious, right? We do the same thing with learning how to drive. We learn all of the parts and pieces of that. I drove a stick until very recently. Just in the past 10 years, I finally gave in and got a car with an automatic transmission. And I bet this is true for Lou, too. You're doing these things with your hands and your feet that are different, right? So you learn one bit, or the dancers in the room, you learn one piece at a time and you put it all together, and then you don't have to think about it anymore. But what happens when you do that with thoughts and feelings about yourself and people and places and the world that you've collected about home, which can apply to spiritual community, school, which can keep you from going back to school, work, which can limit your expression in careers, social life, which could limit you having one at all, and on and on. You could end up being unfulfilled in so many areas because that protective part of you said, never again. So we get to use the power of habit to do something for us rather than to us. And that is to think over and over and over again. Use affirmations and mantras designed specifically like a vaccine to go right to that silly idea and replace it with something good and true about you and about life. We can do that. And we can think and feel things over and over and over again till they become automated, habitual, unconscious, and they're operating in the background for us. And we can change how we feel about home, family, relationships, school, spiritual community, work, travel. Is that an exciting prospect for you, or is that scary? Do you go into a big city and find out where to park to see a concert, or would you prefer to just tune in online? See, this opens doors for us. So the same thing that created the problem can create the solution for us by putting some new thoughts and feelings into the mix. So here's another thing. I got this because last week the topic of feedback was really on the surface, right? And the funny thing was, I sat down with Rick. I'm like, okay, I'm working on this talk about approval seeking, and I want to know what you think, right? And I said, I'm curious, how does feedback happen? And I don't know if I can get this right. One of you who works with audio could give a much better talk on this subject. But part of it was that we want to amplify our voice so everybody can hear it. And yet, with all of these monitors and speakers, making sure that it can be heard here and there and everywhere, we then do something which is to turn up the gain, right? And so what happens is we can turn up the gain so much that we get more feedback than we need, and we're overwhelmed, and it makes a funny sound, and it's not what we had in mind. Sound good? Anyway, I was like, I know there's a metaphor in there. Tell me how this operates. So Rick told me how it operated. Here's the deal, though. Yes, we can get a lot from positive feedback. Ooh, when I was a little kid, I was the youngest of 4, and my oldest sister was 11 years older than me. She still is. The other one's 7 years older. My brother's 5. So my older sisters would bring home dates, and I'm this little tyke, nosy as all get out, and I just can't leave people alone. And I decided that I should belly dance for my sister's dates, where they're like, oh, God. Anyway, so whenever I got positive feedback, of course, I wanted to do whatever that was more. And like any normal person, when I got negative feedback, I got out of there as fast as I could. There are certain areas of life where I determined that I wasn't safe. One of them was home, which really messes up the idea of home, family, spiritual community, being part of a group. It's something to get over for sure. So I would go on these wild adventures with my toys and my stuffed horse and little mouse and their furniture and move out all the time and go somewhere else. And there was a child psychologist in our church communities watching all of us kids and analyzing what we're doing and telling our parents about it. So the thing is that sometimes we can take negative feedback and think, I either have to avoid that place, or I gotta run, or I have to not be myself while I'm there, right? So we don't want to just embrace positive feedback as our only way of knowing how we're doing in life. We also want to have the willingness to embrace what we call negative feedback, because guess what? By contrast, it too will tell us where to go. It's going to give us such specific information about how we've really been thinking and feeling repeatedly. If you know the science of mind and spirit at all, we say, you want to know what you've been believing or thinking or feeling lately? Look at your life. Not to shame or blame, but to empower, okay? Because, and it was already mentioned here, in fact, in the reading earlier, we can think that life is happening to us. And yet, when we know how to use that feedback, it can be a guide as to where to move toward, what to move away from, and also how to change how we're showing up. So it's a good idea to consider the possibility that leaning into and pausing and looking at what we call negative feedback is really going to help us be better. Not be better so that we can get 5 gold stars, an A+ on our report card, or whatever, but better because our point is to cultivate authenticity. The point is to learn how to live, because that makes life more fun. It makes life more worth living. So there's one other thing. Before I change this, though, I want to come back to this a little bit. If you're in a situation, or maybe you can recall one, where you were getting some sketchy feedback, maybe it was somewhere from the middle over to this side. Flat, not so sure, definitely negative, right? Ask yourself. By the way, people in recovery know this. You can always find a bathroom somewhere to go pray, scream, reset, reboot, pause. Nobody will give you flack for that, right? So you can go somewhere, go apart for a moment. And if you have to, if you're in a big crowd and that's not an option, maybe you're on a bus and it's moving, just close your eyes and take a breath and ask yourself some questions. What am I feeling right now? I love this one. If you remember the commercials for Memorex, we were talking about cassette tapes being the rockin' way to record. Well, was it just? Yes, it was that. Okay, so there's a guy sitting in the chair with his hair blowing back because he's listening to a Memorex recording. And the question is it real or is it Memorex? If you remember that, you can stop and ask yourself that question no matter where you are, no matter what's going on. Is it real or is it Memorex? Because it might be an old memory that you gathered long ago, and now you know it's operating automatically, habitually, unconsciously, and hate to tell you, creatively. And it's a gift that that darn thing got woken up, that somebody or something hit the replay button and it started playing again and it got your attention. So if you can say, wait a minute, how am I feeling? Is it real or is it Memorex? Is there a better way, a more up-to-date way I could look at this person, this place, this thing, this situation? Is there a different perspective that would serve me more? Questions like that. Questions like that. And you'll find that you will get answers. That's part of your feedback that you actually get to go get. You get to gather it on purpose. And you'll take something that's been operating unconsciously and creatively since you were 12, and you can actually get it to stop happening, even when you go back to visit your family of origin. That's when it happens a lot. Another good question to ask is, how old am I right now? And you're like, oh my God, I'm 12. You can do something once you pay attention to the feedback, once you ask yourself those questions, and it will be useful to help you rediscover and become more of who you truly are. We can do that. So Ernest Holmes has an interesting formula for healing that is so simple. Now, when we talk about healing disease, we're going to read this in a moment. You're probably reading it already because I put it up there. Dis-ease is not just when it shows up in the physical form, like as a tumor or as irregularity, perhaps in our cardiovascular system and what have you. It's all types of dis-ease. And if you become a really crafty metaphysician, you realize that before it showed up in physicality, it had an expression in your energetic field. It had a formation in your emotional makeup. It had its beginnings in your feeling state, which had its origins in what you were thinking. Okay? So you can either just be ill at ease or you can just be downright ill. But dis-ease covers the whole bailiwick. So look at this with me. This is what Ernest Holmes says. Disease will be healed provided you get at its cause. And by getting at its cause, we mean getting at the mental cause. You cannot heal anyone of his trouble, or hers or theirs, if it is the result of some mental attitude which he, she, or they will not surrender. We get to let go of the old idea, even if it's familiar. If it's not bringing us to our good, if it's blocking our being who we are, or even discovering who that is, we get to consider letting go of it. And you can do it like taking candy from a baby. Have the replacement idea that feels better anyhow right there. So you take the bad idea, you replace it with the good idea, and the crying's over in a second, and this new one actually feels better. In this case, if somebody won't release that old idea, find out what the mental attitude is and remove it. Now, when we finish our celebration today, you'll have an opportunity to come up here and stand with a licensed practitioner and have them help you with exactly that. And if it's a bigger, deeper thing, you can make an appointment with a practitioner, a chaplain, a staff minister. If you got to go all the way to the top, get in touch with Reverend Sonny. There are people who can help you with this. And you can help you with this. The way that you can help yourself with it is by recognizing what you're thinking, recognizing what you're feeling, Bring it back into your conscious awareness. Hey, maybe just make a list of the things, the possible culprits, and bring them into your awareness on purpose before they bite your ankles, Before they're a thing that demands your attention and derails your life for a couple of days or weeks or months. Go ahead on purpose and find out what they are and clean some of them up and watch your life change. The thing is that life is designed to be marvelous and wonderful and filled with infinite possibility. It is. And we are already designed to know how to live it. So what if we do this? What if we recognize what we're thinking and bring it back into our conscious awareness? What if we embrace the applause and the hugs and the smiles and the good stuff and the other stuff too, and let feedback guide us to cultivating and experiencing authenticity, who we truly are? Let's live from the heart of who we are. Let's start really living today. We know how to do that. Let's do it. Thank you.